This episode of the We Are Makers podcast is sponsored by the Real Milk Paint Co. We've collaborated with them for a number of months now, and they've been a key partner in our mission. Transform your projects with their natural, no VOC milk paint, inspired by centuries of craftsmanship, from authentic colours to signature wood oils like Half and Half. They are pioneers of quality finishes and advocates of the maker community. Visit realmilkpaintco.com and use code WAM10 for an exclusive 10% off, and support our mission to celebrate the modern maker. Do you go by your full name? Hugh Roche Kelly?
Yeah, well, that's not even my full name. My full name's Hubert Roche Kelly, but...
We'll go by Hubert for some added pizzazz.
I don't know. I've got a long, childhood trauma of one of my teachers going pubert at me, in front of the thing. I was like, okay, I'm Hugh from now on. But what's funny is, here in French-speaking areas, Hugh is 3 sounds that don't exist in French sandwiched together.
All right.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so there's no H at the start of French. There's no U sound like that. And then if they see it written down, GH, everyone just panics. So I'm more likely to introduce myself as Hubert, so the French of Hubert, than Hugh, or go Hugues.
Or just grunt.
That's funny. So what are you going for?
I think Hugh.
The grunt? I think we're going to go for the grunt. So thanks for showing us about last night in Brussels, and for showing us around your shop here. We'll obviously get into talking a lot about that, because there are a lot of facets to what you're doing. But the first question is, Hugh is Hugh. Who is Hugh?
Okay, well, I suppose I'll start at the beginning, really. I'm Irish. I'm from County Clare, southwest Ireland. I grew up on a farm with lots of big old trees around. I spent my childhood climbing trees and all of this stuff. And I wish I could say that as a child I immediately fell in with making stuff, and this is part of my blood from a young age, and it is totally not the case. I liked trees. I thought they were nice. They climbed them, but it's not that I had this experience growing up of having the workshop outside that I would hide myself away in as a 12-year-old and make things and start carving. None of that. There was sometimes a bit of an ambition towards it, but I wasn't a practically inclined person. I wouldn't have shown signs of anything other than being pretty okay at school.
Yeah.
So I was in school, did quite okay in school, and when it came to the point of choosing university and these big life decisions you have to make as a 17-year-old who you're barely even a person at this point, I was I'm going to be an academic, because I don't want to sound like I'm talking myself up, but at the time I could do pretty okay at school without much effort. I was one of those kind of kids who I'd be fine, especially if I was interested in the subject. I would do plenty enough to get past it. So I went to university in Dublin, so from little farm, next neighbours 3 kilometres away, to Dublin City. Trinity College, kind of prestigious. This is the path you want to go on if you're going to be a academic person, and immediately lost my way, I think. Retrospectively, I can say that now. I got into Dublin, I was overwhelmed by university, I was overwhelmed by the city. I didn't really know, I couldn't really manage it. And things were no longer, it was a huge change, and things were no longer easy. Things were no longer, I'll do a little bit of effort and I'll get by. It's it's a university, it's a different level, and
it's a huge jump up as well.
It's a huge jump up, and I was used to it being easy to be smart, and suddenly I was surrounded by people who were actually very smart.
Yeah, right.
And I only noticed afterwards that I was those guys are really smart and they're doing a ton of work. And so that started to kind of fall apart pretty quickly. I hung on in there until almost my final year, until the lack of work eventually kind of caught up. But once I was in Dublin, I had to start working. We weren't, I wasn't from a family that I could just go to university and not have to worry about anything, and everything would be paid for. Especially Dublin was and is an expensive city. So I started kind of looking for work, and friends of mine who had come to the same city with me had started working in technical aspects of theatre, especially in music. So big summer festivals, this kind of stuff. Just kind of grunt work at first, like pushing boxes around. But that became more interesting to me pretty quickly than what I was supposed to be doing there.
What were you doing? What day were you studying there?
History.
History.
Okay. That's a good point.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you want the bad jokes, I kind of figured out there wasn't really any future in it. So I left that all in the past.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I started working, like, these were grunt jobs, you know, like pushing boxes around. And eventually just being exposed to that, I started looking for more and more work in that. I did things like stage building for big concerts for a long time. Just a lot of big productions coming through town. They need hundreds of people working. And I'd be one of those guys. Then I'd be kind of more senior in that. Started doing a lot of rigging, like hanging stuff, very heavy things over people's heads. Did some little bits of training in that. And eventually I kind of went, oh, I'm doing really long hours in like muddy fields in Ireland. Like it's not like a particularly glamorous work, dealing with sometimes a lot of difficult kind of rock and roll personalities.
Egos.
That kind of stuff. Yeah. So I also had friends who were working more in theatre, and I kind of went, oh, well, theatre's indoors. That can be nicer. The days are 12 hours instead of 16 hours. Yeah. This is going to be a big change in my life. And yeah, started working on that. So I got short jobs here and there doing bits and stuff. And I kind of started finding that I had an affinity for making stuff, helping other people make stuff in a creative way, that things would be delivered on time, things would be okay. It's like, okay, we've got a whole bunch of work to do. We have to do this and this. And there was like 2 or 3 kind of people, guys who were like technical directors of different theatres in Dublin, who kind of went, this guy Hugh seems nice. Sometimes you just have to be friendly and kind of nice to be around, and that's how you get started in places. Like, it's not that I had masses of technical skill. Like, I still remember the first plug I wired to make like some things. Like, thank God somebody saw that thing before I plugged it in. It was a disaster. So it wasn't that I had a great depth of technical skill. I was a nice guy to be around, and I'd work hard. So if there was something I didn't know how to do, I'd fix that problem by working hard and finding people. So this is like going back to 2006, kind of, 2006 to 2008. I started doing more and more of this kind of work. And it really became my main role. So my main occupation was this technical theatre. I did lighting. I did a lot of gallery work. I did all sorts of stuff. And a lot of it was short-term contracts, working on festivals, like theatre festivals, arts festivals, doing big art installs. We did some really crazy stuff, like big inflatables stuck to the side of buildings, lots of gallery installs in old buildings. Like there's things I know how to do with squash balls that will structurally blow your mind, you know? And this is all knowledge that I'd get from the people I was working with. By the time it came to like 2009, 2012 or so, I had a very steady career in this. I had 3 or 4 kind of companies I was working for all the time, touring their work, helping them develop work, doing logistics, packing trucks, sending stuff off, touring then, which shows a lot. So again, great, especially in your mid-20s. You've got a job that travels a lot. We did a tour where the schedule was like a week in Australia, 2 weeks in Ireland, 3 weeks in the States, another week in Ireland, off for a month, then New Zealand for 3 weeks, later like Korea, China. We traveled a lot of places. Did really nice work with companies and artists that I really, really liked their work and really liked being around. And I met my now wife, who was Belgian, so we're sitting in Belgium, I should say.
Yeah, we should say that. We're sitting in Brussels in Belgium, yeah.
So Alicia was from here, and she'd been living in Dublin for some time. So we met there, got together pretty quickly. We were introduced by a friend, and yeah. By the time it came to like 2013, I suppose my career had settled in a way. I had these like handful of companies I was working for all the time. I was happy working for them. It was nice work. but I also kind of knew I'd maybe plateaued a bit, which is fine. And you can plateau and stay on that plateau for a long time. But I was plateauing in a position where I was away from home 5 to 6 months of the year, if you add it all up. Like I remember we got our first dog together, and we got a big dog. She was a Rottweiler, 37 kilos of dog. My wife had never had a dog before in her life. We got the dog. 3 weeks later, I left for 5 weeks.
Gosh.
Yeah.
This isn't really it was fine. It all worked out. But it's not really a scenario that you feel like, I'm really contributing in a good way to this household, you know. So part of what we did was we moved from Dublin to Brussels for a whole bunch of reasons. One of the reasons was my parents-in-law were getting older and older, and my wife wanted to be closer to them. We also kind of wanted to leave Dublin a little bit. Dublin has become quite a difficult city to live in. Like I've spoken recently about this with a friend who's passing through Brussels, who I used to work with back in Dublin. And she was saying the same thing. It's like so few people still actually live in Dublin that are in that industry, to the point where it's impossible almost to find enough crew to work a particular show. It's a real challenge in Dublin because the industry, it's not very well paid, it's very long hours, there's quite a bit of pressure and stress. And it's not exactly very attractive to people either. So I was one of those people. I left. We came to Brussels. Brussels was also a place where there was art and performances coming out of Brussels and Belgium in wider sense that were passing through Dublin that I was seeing in arts festivals going, wow, how is this work even being created? How is there a support structure for this kind of stuff? So I was excited to move over to Belgium to work on that stuff, because I was, at that point in Ireland, I kind of had something of a reputation of going, you've got something weird, get Hugh on it and it'll be fine. You've got to get 3 tons of sand off stage in half an hour. Hugh can make it happen. It'll be okay. So I was coming over with a bit of that, and I was attracted more and more to that kind of work. So we moved over 10 years ago now, and did a little bit of back and forth. Pretty quickly got involved in the work of some of those artists that I'd been pulled over. So artists like Meet Warlap, who's a Belgian performance artist, whose work it's almost installation. It's like somehow installation and performance art kind of put together. So that required a lot of very creative thinking. Sometimes a lot of inventions, like making something that hadn't been made before. And that was like the best part of that kind of work, is that thing. Like I was describing it a bit yesterday when we were talking. There was a team involved in it. It wasn't just me. But there's a thing that we had to make once, was a record player that could play a plaster cast of a record that was about 1 meter wide, 80 centimeters wide, and weighed like 13 kilos. And we had to figure a system of actually getting a pickup and turning that thing at the right speed live on stage for performance that a performer could operate. That kind of stuff I loved doing. I loved doing that kind of stuff and getting it over the line. It was often stressful, and it was developing skills that I didn't come into that job with. Worked with a couple of different companies in Belgium. At the same time in Brussels, I had started getting involved in volunteering for Tournive, where we're currently standing. So I'll talk maybe about them in a bit. And was more and more feeling like I'm a person who makes things somehow from, not out of instinct, but out of kind of forcing myself into that mold of, I'm someone now who can make stuff. If you dream something up, I can make it. And that was really enjoyable. But I was still at the point of being away from home 5-6 months of the year, doing a lot of touring, a lot of time on the road, a lot of long hours, visiting cities and not really seeing them. A bit like you were talking about before. Like I've been to Budapest twice and I've never seen the city. I've just been hotel, venue, airport, and that's been it. So apparently Budapest is beautiful.
One day you'll
I have no
see
idea.
it.
So I kind of wanted to do more and more of the stuff I loved with less and less of the stuff that was, not that I didn't like it, I liked traveling and everything, but it was starting to interfere with having like a normal life, or having a life where I could reliably do stuff and not miss birthdays and things like that all the time.
Don't you?
Yeah. And also kind of, it was stopping me a little bit from being involved in the city, in the place I actually lived. Like even when I was here, I do a lot of work outside of Brussels, like, or the studios of the artist I was working for was in Ghent, for example. Ghent's also a nice place, but you know, I'd go there and I'd come back. It's close, but it's not home. So I started trying to think of ways that like, can I do what I like to do, but actually stay at home and do this kind of stuff? And I knew I didn't want to work in like an institution or a museum. Maybe one day I'll change my mind on that. I knew I wanted to still have this somewhat independent schedule. Sometimes that's an illusion, but I didn't want to go and work as a technical director for some company. I don't really speak Dutch, which I'd have to, or speak French, but that's maybe not enough. Like most crew here would be at least trilingual. Mm-hmm. So me thinking, I speak French, I'm in a good place. Like my wife has 5 languages, you know.
Wow, 5.
And that's not uncommon here, you know. It's a very international place.
Speak one.
Yeah, what can we speak? English and ask English, American English. And ask for a plastic bag in Norwegian, that's about it.
That's an important first step. Yeah. I mean, I was pretty happy when I got to the point of being able to order the right beer that I wanted, and the waffle, and the right chips with the right sauce. Like
that's important.
I think there's an actual check. Yeah, I think there's an actual official language level for just that.
Just that. Yeah.
So remember, I actually told my wife at the time. I was like, you know what? I want to be a maker. And she kind of looked at me and was like, what the hell does that even mean? You know, like practically speaking, what's that going to look like? And I was like, I don't know. I'm gonna have stuff, and people will come to me, and I'll make things for them.
I'm going to be the guy that does the thing with the things, and then it's going to be a thing.
Exactly. So that was as sophisticated as my plans ever really got at the start. Like I didn't have a vision for what I was going to do. I didn't have all the stuff that now, retrospectively, like trying to learn more about how I'm supposed to run myself as a business. Everything's like, you have to have a vision. What's your USP? What's all this stuff? I'm not saying you don't have to have that stuff. It's probably very, very good. But you can start without it, especially if it's not what you're going to necessarily make all of your living off. So, long story short, I kind of started doing less and less theatre and performance work. 2019 was the last time I had kind of regular work in that industry. Then when COVID hit, obviously theatre, performance, all that just stopped overnight. And at that point, I'd already started working here for Tournive, and I had started doing enough of my own projects that I was actually busy, and I wasn't waiting for that phone to start ringing again for that kind of thing. And I also kind of felt like, well, whenever it was like 2021, say, when people did start working and that industry did start picking up again here, I also kind of felt like I knew dozens of people who were desperate to start working again. And I was like, I'm not in that position. I don't want to answer the phone. I don't want to start doing this thing again. So that was kind of it. In that industry, I still put my toe back into it from time to time. Like,
just to keep it.
Yeah, it's like I still do enjoy it. I just don't want it to be my 100% either, you know? So, like last year, there was a company from Ireland coming, doing a show in Antwerp. I covered for a guy on it for like 2 or 3 days, and it was really nice. It's like a theatre I've worked in before. I was like, oh yeah, hey. And it was fine. This year I built a small theatre set for somebody, which was also nice, because I did it at my own pace, delivered on time, everything was fine, everyone was happy. But other things had developed to the point where I no longer needed to count on it and could come here and go home at the end of the day. So the main thing that had developed was Tournive. So Tournive, it's a play on words. So tournevis with an S at the end is a screwdriver in French.
Right.
Okay.
And then tournevis, V is life. So it turns your life around.
Ah, okay.
I don't know why, but double meaning words, wordplay like that is very popular in Belgium.
Okay.
If you can get a business name that's got some kind of double meaning to it, it seems
You'll
to
be
be
right.
immediately a winner.
Yeah.
So I'd shown you around earlier what Tournive is as a ground project. It's a tool library.
Yeah.
So it's a concept that's around quite a few places in the world. There's one in Edinburgh that we mentioned. There's quite a few around. What we are, it's a lending library for tools. So we've got power tools, we've got hand tools, we've got accessories. And our aim is twofold, or kind of global aim is that people should have access to these kind of tools. They don't need to buy them all the time because most people will buy it and it gets used very, very little. So there's a statistic, I'd have to look up where we found the statistic, but like a battery drill driver, the average one that's bought by like a home user, it gets bought, it gets home, used a couple of times, put up some shelves, stays in the cupboard. That drill is used on average for like 12 to 14 minutes.
That's crazy,
entirely
isn't it?
over its entire life. That's
Yeah.
it. So you don't need to buy that tool. Here we've got a whole bunch of battery drills. We've got dozens and dozens, and they get used all the time. So in the space of a week, those drills will go through a lifetime's worth of use for the tool that's staying at home. So this is just logical, right? It's like a tool, things can be used much more.
Yeah, it's not a hard sell, is it?
No. And then the other part for us, or kind of, we've an environmental aim, which is if there's tool libraries everywhere, then we don't need to have these cheap, low-cost, low-value tools on the market at all. If you go into like a big box store like, what is it, Woody's in the UK, or Brico here, or Harbor Freight in the States, you'll see the bargain tools. They're like €16 jigsaw. It's going to be horrible to use. It's going to make way more noise than any other tool you've ever held in your life. It's actually going to use more electricity than a more powerful tool from someone else. You're going to use that, you're going to feel, well, this tool sucks, so I suck.
Yeah.
And that's not actually it. It's a tool that only exists because it's been massively overproduced. Like there's companies in Asia somewhere pumping out hundreds and thousands of these kind of tools using the cheapest possible materials, cheapest possible components, non-standard stuff, just like this is cheap, put it together. And it's only really made to work for those 12 minutes that these tools get used.
Yeah.
That's not just their use, that's their life expectancy almost. So if instead of 20 people each buying 20 of those tools, those 20 people, that money still goes into tool purchase, but it goes into one tool. We can get, for example, a Makita jigsaw that costs €360 new. That tool will last, and will last being used 8 hours a day for 20 years. When it breaks down, you can get the repair part for it and you can keep it going again.
Yes.
So that's, in a nutshell, what the tool library is. In 2019, when I was kind of trying to shimmy my way out of theatre and look for a way of making things for a living, we decided to expand this concept into not just having tools that we can give access to, but also space. So at the time we were in a kind of in the garage of like a cultural institution in Molenbeek in the north of Brussels, the Varkapoen, and they gave us a space kind of in their garage. So the tool library was there, and we had like 100 square meters, like maybe not even 88 square meters or something of space. I went, okay, we could put a workshop in here. We got a little bit of funding together, like a one-off grant as a startup for the project. That allowed us to buy some basic machinery. It allowed us as an organization to hire me also part-time as a workshop manager. So my role in Tournive is general management of the workshop space, making sure everything's working, making sure there's consumables. But it's become much more a kind of training role. So we've got the space, we've got these machines. especially since then, we've upgraded our machines. Most of the machines we have now are like industrial standard. We're also giving a lot of training and instruction on how to use these. So I've lost my train of thought. That's what I'm doing in Tournive. It's the workshop manager and instructor, because I've used those kind of tools in theatre workshops and stuff before. I'm self-taught for some things. I've been trained on other things, so also metalworking. I'm a pretty decent welder. I'm not like a certified welder. We don't do welding certification courses here. But if someone goes, I'd like to be able to make a table with like a steel frame for my living room.
Yeah, get the basics.
Get the basics, get the practice, get access to the stuff that allows that to happen kind of quickly and easy. So that was a part-time role, and it's a part-time job that came with a workshop. So I went, well, maybe I can use the space for myself as well. So as we kind of got in, I did start getting some phone calls going, oh, we hear you're kind of available. Do you want to actually do some work? So the first thing that I made for someone, like this concept of me trying to explain to my wife what a maker is, like if someone asks you to make something, you make it for them, so you're a maker. The first thing I made in that kind of framework was a working guillotine. It was for a stage show. Don't know if they actually used it in the end, because this thing was a literal working guillotine. It was terrifying. But they were going to cut cake with it or something, but it had a blade like this size. So I was like, okay, that was a lot of fun. And I could do that kind of without having to launch a business. I could get a contract with the company just to do that work. That was fine. And then I got asked to do more and more stuff, and it quickly became, oh, I need some kind of a structure, like a business that I can charge this to, like you just need a business. So here in Belgium, there is a pretty high tax burden and a pretty high like social payments burden, because there's a lot of benefits you get. There's a really relatively very good system here for that kind of stuff. So it can be expensive as a entirely self-employed person, because you've got a lot of that burden on you as a person that normally your employer takes. So what I've got is, in French it's called indépendant complémentaire. So it's like a self-employed, but it's not your main activity. You've got a job that you work a certain minimum amount of hours for.
Which for you is Tournive.
Which for me is Tournive, it's the workshop here. So that is where a lot of the social charges go on my employer, and as a business you still have to pay tax, obviously. There still is social payments, but it makes it much more much more, you can be much more flexible in your work. You can be much less rigid. You don't have, I have a massive tax bill coming, so I need to work. You can be much more flexible in your approach and kind of what you do. So I started with that. I had to put in like, what are you going to do as your business? And I was like, I'm gonna make things. It was really as I had to go through all these like long lists of codes, and I think I landed on fabrication artisanale en bois, so like wooden artisanal things. I make things. That was as close as I could get to it. And since I started, I've never really been short of work, and I just took the jobs as they come. One of the first things I did was a big sculpture. It was a gravestone actually, made out of wood, and that was kind of a personal project. It was for a friend whose spouse had died, and they had put a lot of faith in me that I didn't necessarily have in myself at the time, because this was a very challenging work. It was the first, I think still the only wooden grave monument in the country, so I had to do a lot of negotiation with like some of the local authority involved to actually even get permission for it to do it. Well, because there's standards for these things, right? It has to be 2x1. The marble thing has to be a certain size. For all sorts of environmental reasons, they have to be able to dig up the grave if for some legal reason it has to happen in the future. There was a lot of things that I wouldn't have thought of until I was in that position. But that worked. That was a very large undertaking for me, and that was it kind of was in some way kind of stressful, but not because I was, there was stress that I would have in my previous job that was like, I've got deadlines, I've got this isn't working, this isn't working. There I had more of stress of,
But you're
I hope
taking
this
on-
is
yeah.
nice.
Well,
This is something I need to be
You've
good.
got that responsibility to make
Yeah.
it be good.
And that was, I had sleepless nights about it, but it wasn't sleepless nights of, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to do this? I wish I was doing something else. It was sleepless nights of, I hope this is good, and I hope I can deliver it, and I could. Then, shortly after that, there was another organization that I started being involved with, not as an employee of them, but as a partner, I suppose, or they were partners to me. It's an organization called the Sonnian Wood Cooperative. So the Sonnian Wood is a big forest. It's just south of Brussels. It's quite unique in Europe. It's the largest old growth beech forest that's there in Europe. It's not a commercially operated forest. It was planted in 18 something by a guy who was really into beech trees and was the forest manager for some big estate.
Yeah.
He went, beech trees, this is the future, and it's almost a monoculture of beech. And now, at the point we are now in 2023, it means that there's a forest full of massive beech trees that are often reaching the end of their life, and just because of the sheer volume of trees that are there, even without it being commercially exploited, it's producing thousands of cubic meters of timber every single year. And it has been for a long time, and that volume is only increasing. Things are getting to the end of their life. There's a general kind of project of reducing the monoculture of the forest a little bit, so other tree species are now being planted in there. This requires trimming of some of the beech. And the way that beech gets out of the forest up until now has been one of these kind of examples of the globalized marketplace where you go, this doesn't make any sense. So what happens is you have a tree that's standing up, this tree needs to go, or it's been identified as a risk or whatever. The tree is auctioned off to various stakeholders who have the licensing and competence to go down and cut down a 30 meter by 1 meter wide beech tree. That'll be sold. Then that wood, once it's down, is sold on the open market. So what that mostly means, the tree gets cut to the length of a shipping container, rammed into a shipping container, and it gets sent around the world, China, Asia generally. And that's where it gets processed from wood into whatever product. Those products then come back into Europe, and they're labeled European beech countertops, and they get sold in great big stores.
Jeez.
So it's an obvious ecological nonsense, right? It doesn't make any sense. It's like the story that I used to hear was always the Scottish smoked salmon would get packed in China because it was cheaper to send it back and forth around the world and operate those plants in the UK. So this organization, Sonnian Wood Co-op, was founded in 2020, and their aim is just to intervene in that and try and keep some of that material in Belgium or even in Brussels. So they take, honestly, a fraction of that material every year. They've built up partnerships with all sorts of organizations, big sawmills that can still handle this kind of stuff. They'll sell raw lumber directly to clients. A lot of their work is transforming it into final products. So I was doing a lot of that work with them, making like countertops, making tabletops, making some install projects, like shelving for places. I did fences for a guy's house. That guy then asked me to make stairs for him. So I was kind of tipping along, doing install carpentry kind of work. I was getting more and more into the importance of what material I was using. And it was the only thing that maybe not the only thing, obviously everything comes back from childhood, but the link I had as a kid to trees and to wood and all that, the only thing that really came back was actually it'd be really good to know where this material is coming from. Mm-hmm. Like, here's a tree standing, here's something made out of wood. For a lot of kind of in the modern world, that kind of link is broken for a lot of things. Like, you pick up a wooden chopping board or whatever from some shop, you don't know where that's from most of the time.
It's huge detachment, massive detachment. It's one of the clear goals of We Are Makers is like to educate people in where thing comes from, i.e. the person, and all of the string in between.
Yeah.
It's massive.
Yeah, and it's certainly became more and more important to me as doing this install carpentry stuff. Sometimes you just I get 5 panels of plywood before COVID when the prices went insane. You know, it was cheap and quick and easy, and the client would be delighted. They go, "Oh, it's beautiful. I love this plywood look." And sometimes that can be really nice. You know, I'm not slamming on plywood.
No.
But it's an industrial product, you know? I can't go, even with like, you know, there's FSC labels and stuff like this for sustainable forestry management and stuff like that. That's definitely better than random wood from the shop, but it's still just a label, you know? It's like organic. Organic doesn't tell you the whole story of where the product comes from, of who's making it or anything like that. It's a label that's been paid for. Not to get into a huge debate about labeling and organic and whatever, but you know, what I'd like is to go, here's a thing, here's the tree it came from. You can go and see where that was. It's really close to here. So anything that the Signing Wood Co-op will have, that tree will have been from within 34 kilometers of the main square of Brussels, like where we were last night, where the light show was. So that's their operating area. That encompasses most of this forest. That's where most of the stuff comes from.
34 kilometres is not a large radius.
No, it's not even 20 miles, right? It's like...
It's 0.6 to a kilometre.
Math pause. Yeah, it's about 20 miles, right?
Yeah, was that 6, 12, 18... It's pretty much bang on 20 miles.
Yeah. So it's a small radius, and that became much more important to me. Around the same time, I was fiddling, like ever since we had the workshop, I was playing around with wood turning a little bit. It was, for us when we started a wood shop, it was the basic tools are table saw, planer jointer, drill press, miter saw, lathe. So we wanted to be able to do all this stuff. It's just a good utility tool to have. Started messing with it a bit more, got somewhat competent with it, but never really. It was just one of the things I was doing, and I was really on this carpentry install kind of route, which I was enjoying, but it started to become. I had some projects that didn't go well, one or two kind of failures that affected me quite a bit actually, because
yeah, they will.
This was the thing that I was doing instead of something else, right? This was like I'm putting
and that
all my
stress
eggs
is coming
on this.
back again.
Yeah, and if you know, I fell into let's say theatre performance, that kind of thing, because university was a failure for me. I left that because, well, I could maybe have a better life trying to chase something new. If this is going to be a failure as well, this is serious for
I hear
me,
it.
you know?
I know that feeling.
So that led me to kind of step back a little bit from it. You know, I still was in a really, really lucky position and remain in a really lucky position where I have this part-time job. That's me covered. You know, I've got my mortgage is going to be paid. I'm going to be okay. I can do little investments in my business. You know, some other windfalls came here and there. Like that meant I was insulated from massive failure. Like bankruptcy wasn't really going to be on the horizon. You know, touch wood. So and wood turning was always enjoyable. It was something that I liked doing. I could do small objects and go, this is nice. This is really nice. And it was something I could bring home and go, yeah, this is a nice thing.
I made it.
And it was like I made it instead of someone asked me to make this. So this is what I did. Here's a staircase. You know, I can't bring that home and go, look, I did a nice thing. You have to take some pictures and you go, yeah, it's fine, you know. But someone else is using it all the time. It's something that this person needed and asked me to do. That it's really nice to fulfill that. But it's not that I can say that staircase or that bookshelf that was exactly this length, because that's the length of that wall, I put a huge amount of expression into, or that I could really optimize the material that I had chosen and made. This is the thing that I needed to make out of that
You're
material.
trying to make that material fit a certain space. And,
And, you know, also, well, So it was fine. I was enjoying the wood turning as not really doing it professionally, doing it as a hobby. Occasionally, I'd have to wood turn something into a project, like a lid for a bin or something like that. Yeah, we'll use the lathe here in the Tournive workshop, and this was a nice little project, nice little tray, something like an accessory to a piece I was making. And then in 2022, so like just under 2 years ago, year and a half ago, I saw an opportunity in Ireland. It was a thing called the Craft Hub Residency. And this was a residency project you applied for. It was for professional woodworkers and wood turners. And it was a week-long residency at Glenn Lucas's Wood Turning Study Centre in Ireland. So Glenn Lucas is a very well-known production wood turner. He makes quite a high volume of pieces. And he's especially known as a teacher and demonstrator of wood turning. So he's very, very efficiently minded, and he's a very efficient wood teacher as well. I saw the opportunity come up because I'd been keeping an eye on him. I'd followed him on Instagram with the aim of actually going there and doing a training directly with him at some point, going, yeah, this will really make me go up another step. So he posted about this opportunity, going, yeah, it's for professionals, people who are wood turning a lot, other skills are welcome. So I kind of was like, other skills are welcome. I kind of clung on to that, going, yeah, I've done sculptural work as well, I've done some carving, I've done some bits.
You're working in theatre, and certainly from what we discussed about theatre effects last night, you have done all of the other skills.
Yeah.
Like my work in film, I've done all of the other skills.
Yeah.
That bracket of special effects work is, can you do all of these things?
Yeah, exactly. Really? So I could kind of go, okay, I'm not very advanced in wood turning, but I've got something of a conceptual mind. I can conceive stuff and go through it. So I put together an application for it, going, this could be a really nice experience. I got accepted into it. I was like, okay, this is going to be really great. I'm really looking forward to it. And then I looked at who else was on the list. Like 2 days before getting on the plane and going over, I saw the full list of people, and I was like, oh, I recognize some of those names.
Yeah.
And it was like 2 or 3 people who'd been also people I followed on Instagram already, who were wood turning 20, 30 years already. And it was immediate, like, imposter syndrome. What am I even doing here? I'm not in the same room as these people. These are not like my peers, right? But it actually turned out to be an extremely it was actually a life-changing week, to be honest, because I went over there. It wasn't a training course, but I learned so much just by being in the same room. So there was people there like Giorgio Romani, who you've talked to before.
Yep.
Featured them in edition 8.
And Franz Kilhofer, I can never pronounce his second name. He's on Instagram as a ginger wood turner. Also really, really, really accomplished craftsperson. And like, you know, people are really living that mold of crafts people, much more so than me with my like, I made some stairs, you know? But very, very generous people. They were really generous with their time, they were generous with their skills. And by the end of that week, wood turning had clicked so much for me. I was like,
nice.
This is what I'm going to concentrate on. This is where I can express something with wood that I've never been able to express before. If I've made some really cool stage effect, it's like there's MDF and there's staples through it to hold it together. Yeah. It's painted perfectly. It looks perfect from the audience. Just don't approach it too much, and it's going to work technically as an object.
Yeah.
To instead being, I'm going to try and tell a story with this piece of material because the material already has a story. There's like a big lump of wood isn't just like, yeah, we can count the rings and go back in time. It's like, that's true. But if you really start looking at it, and if you've got a piece that that shows that story a bit more, you can really start imagining things. You can go, so the grain is doing this, so there's a crack there, or there's some staining there. It's like, what's that about? And it's a bit like, you can go and do wood turning. You can do a wood turning course anywhere. Like, I can teach you wood turning. But there, my first exposure to kind of this higher end of it wasn't just with a really good teacher like Glenn, which is already a massive thing, but Glenn and Giorgio and Franz and Rune, guy from Norway, Nick Vostermans, who's in Manchester Studio Critical. He's also a really, really great craftsman, does a lot of hand carving. All of these people together, and my mind just went like,
so much
open up.
experience in one room.
So much experience, so much possibility I didn't even know about. It's like, was it Donald Rumsfeld did that like known unknown speech that he got a lot of slack for the speech he did in the UN, going there's known unknowns and unknown unknowns. He stumbled over the words or something and it was completely incomprehensible. But he actually had a really good point. There's so much to some crafts and some aspects of life, you don't even know what you don't know about it. And in like the space of 4 days, I was like, oh, I didn't know about that. Oh, I didn't know about that. And I very quickly went, this is a thing for me. And there, you know, for that residency, we had to produce a piece. We collaborated on this big sculptural work with lots of turned pieces, lots of different sculptors. There were other people there who were more from a sculptural background. There's really nice guy, Matt from Liverpool, who did like, who does a lot of ice carving, that kind of stuff, so pure sculptural work, that kind of thing. And it all instilled into like making one object by the end of the week. And I was trying stuff that I wouldn't have dared trying a couple of days before. And then you come home and you go, okay, now I'm back on my little 12-inch max kind of quite cheapo lathe that I did do a lot of work on, but I felt immediately limited compared to there. Like Glenn's workshop is absolutely amazing. It's like you couldn't, if you look at a thing that's in there, it's the best possible version of that thing that exists. It was so well thought out. I come back and we've got some bits and pieces together. So I really tried to start building that then as my practice. And I kind of had a feeling of, you know, I'm 38 years old. I'm not old, but there's guys my age who've been doing it already 20 years, you know? So I had this, okay, look, I know I can pick up technical skills quickly. This is what I've spent my whole adult life doing. How do I get this as my practice? How do I develop this, keep this kind of momentum going?
That experience alone must have given you a lot of confidence though.
Like the week itself, I mean, yeah hugely. Because it was, you know, it could have been a disaster, right? I could have gone over there and gone, oops, and just had a piece fly off the lathe and smack me in the face and go, probably shouldn't let Hugh on the lathe again this week. It's a dangerous situation, you know? Like that's the stuff that goes through your head when you turn up for something like that. Yeah. But instead it went well. I made a piece that I'm really proud of that's been exhibited since, along with the rest of the piece. It has been exhibited since. I met people who are friends. We still talk, like Giorgio and Nick and I talk all the time.
Again, it's bringing people together, the whole community, collaboration.
And it was really, that was the aim of that project. So that was one residency out of, I think 8 or 9 that they did using different crafts all over Europe.
That's cool.
So there was like ceramicists, glass workers, kind of folk craft stuff, like more textile work, lots and lots of different things. For me, it was a very, very powerful experience because it showed me something that I didn't really know about, and showed me something that was filling a gap that I didn't know what was supposed to be in that gap, and like being able to do nice stuff, but actually take it a bit further. So that was 2022. Since then, I just looked for help, which was also a big thing, because the reason that week was such a success is because I had help. There were people there helping me. I could help a little bit with some of it, but I got a huge amount of help from the others. And I think that was something that I struggled with for a long time beforehand, was actually asking for and
seeking help
accepting
is so important.
the help.
Yeah.
Especially in theatre and performance, you have that thing of being slightly overwhelmed with the amount of things you might have to do that day for that deadline. And I wasn't good at asking for help at all. My default would be, there's 15 things to do, I've got 4 hours to do it. It's going to be faster for me to just work really, really hard and do it all, instead of taking 10 minutes with somebody else going, can you do this for me? This is my problem. This is what we need to get done. What do you think? And actually getting that help. And like to the point where I'd be grumpy. I would like really get grumpy if people offered me help. I'd snap at people back.
Because you're like, I've not got time to...
I don't have, yeah.
It's not like you feel you've not got time to explain how to... I had to learn this when I built my first engineering team. Like, you have to stop yourself, check yourself, take a breath from the initial reaction of, I've not got help to explain to you how I would do it. I've not got time for that. And then actually you're like, but I've not got time to do the thing.
Yeah.
So actually I'd be better taking 3% of the time explaining how to do it and letting you get on with it.
Exactly. And then...
But the immediate reaction is not that.
No, not at all. And that's not a helpful thing, because it's like that kind of person in that world, like the grumpy technician, is a little bit of the cliche.
Yes.
And I really didn't want to fall into that, you know, and I could see myself falling into that, going, just let Hugh do it himself, otherwise he turns into an arsehole, you know? Yeah. It's like I didn't want to do that, but I didn't really know what my way out of that was either. But like later I started working with some bigger teams, and I met people I started to meet and work with people who were able to break that for me. They'd go, I remember once, now a very good friend of mine, we were working on some set piece, and I was like really trying to figure it out, try to figure something out. And she had an idea, and I had an idea, and she went, I couldn't really, it wasn't even that it was like even worse than I don't have time to explain it. It was like, I don't have time, I don't have the energy to listen to your idea.
Yeah.
Which was even worse, because then I'm not just making my life worse, I'm like undoing someone else's work, making someone else's work difficult.
Yeah.
But she was experienced, she was able to go, Hugh, go get lunch.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, I need a sandwich. Like I'm being a prick.
This is the definition of hangry.
Yeah. And that was a moment where I went, oh yeah, okay, there's another way of working. So I just left and came back, and she was like, yeah, that idea didn't work out, but we're going to do this. And it was just a completely different vibe.
Yeah.
And that was also, you know, why am I in that nice creative industry getting to that point? So when I was trying to get this, I was like, okay, let's start looking for help. And I think as most people, most like crafts people or independent makers, I think if any of them are really honest, they're not really self-made. There's always some help somewhere that you need. Absolutely has to have been there somewhere. Whether that's, I don't want to use the word privilege, but like the luck of being able to have a space for very little, like say, parents have a shed that you can use to start your business. Yeah. All of these things, it's not like, it doesn't undermine the existence of your business. It enables it to happen at all. So here, I had already a lot of luck, because there was a workshop there available. I take a couple of square meters out of the workshop here. It doesn't affect other users. I'm here more often. It works for the organization. I started looking then I can't really afford to invest in the best gear I want. And everything I do, I always want it to be the best. You don't need the Ferrari lathe and the best wood turning tools and everything. But if it's what you've started off, it's like the moment of you clicked, you've been surrounded by, this is all the best stuff. You don't exactly want to come home and go, yeah, this will be good enough. So I found I suppose, equivalent of like a Chamber of Commerce, like local enterprise board. Grant was an annually awarded grant. And I think I can write a good application for this. And because I had the link with the Sonny and Wood Co-op, I could get fantastic material that had this story behind it. And that from like environmental aims of local government and Chamber of Commerce and all this stuff, everything tied in very well. And I could go, look, there's this material, I can use it, and I can use it for this stuff and make really high quality work. And I know I can do this because I know this level of work is possible. I just need the material, and then I need the tools. So I put in an application for professionalizing my setup. That was basically what the idea was. Right. So better equipment, and then also training. So the training that I did, I went for a week one-on-one with Giorgio, so one of the guys I met at the residency. I went to his place for a week. like me and Giorgio were friends. He's a very generous instructor. That was fantastic, and that was the second kind of level up from, oh, this kind of thing is possible, and oh, I can kind of achieve it, to, okay, this is really drilling down into the detail and getting into not just the technique of the tool, but like, you know, Giorgio's he's a master of philosophy. Like that's what he studied. So he has a very clear kind of point of view in it, and I could kind of listen to that and take that in and feel a bit more comfortable with the idea of expressing myself more as an artist than just as a producer of stuff, a technical person. Yeah. Because I've spent my whole life enabling artists and learning from them and learning through them, but I would never say I'm an artist, because no, I'm the guy who gets it done, you know?
Yeah. I'm the guy who takes the brief and makes that a reality, yeah. And like, the brief part's actually the big part of being that's the artistic part of being the maker. It's where the brief comes from. Does it come from you, like, or externally?
What's the purpose, what's the story, you know? And that's now much more important to me. And even in, like, so what I do now as a wood turner, part of what I do is like production work, so kind of higher volume pieces that I make them because you need to sell stuff, and it's good technical practice and stuff like that. The other part is the weirder pieces, like the larger artistic stuff, hollow volumes. I really love doing that kind of work. It's because that's really what we were doing at this residency, was trying to make more these kind of things. And the people I've learned from, like, the stuff that Giorgio makes is mind-blowing that can even be made. It's huge pieces. So I love doing that kind of stuff. But for me now, even the production pieces, there's nothing wrong with doing lots of production.
Yeah.
But those need to have a story as well. So I make these, I make a lot of quite small, like, plates, like, 20 to 25 kind of centimeter shallow plates. I make them because I've got lots of material that's dry, that's ready to go. I can make them quickly out of material from the Sonia Wood Co-op that I've like stockpiled over the years. This will be good for this project. I can go through that and make these things quickly at like a volume where I can turn up with a box of them at a maker fair or whatever, a maker's market. Especially now coming up to Christmas, I definitely need to spend 2 days producing quite a few more, because I know those things are going to sell fine. Yeah. But even those, for me, they need to have like a story. And the reason I started doing them, I'd done a couple and was like showing them to some friends. I was like, yeah, maybe I'll make some more. And a friend of ours, Tessa, who's herself does jewelry art and very interesting person. She's a friend of ours who's Dutch. As a kid, her parents moved to like Tarn in the southwest of France, really middle of nowhere. Like they bought a barn in the middle of the forest, like kind of a mad Dutch kind of thing to do. And she picked it up and just immediately started talking about, as kids, they had these wooden plates, and each of the kids in the family had their own little wooden plate, and that was theirs, and it was their job to, first thing in the morning, they would take it up, they'd eat off this plate, they'd clean it after them, and that was each kid's individual job. So she held this little, thing that was an experiment for me, and immediately went, oh, this is it. So for me now, that's the story of those plates. That's what it's for.
So that wasn't the story when you made the first one, but the fact that story then became the reason you continue to make them.
Yeah. So I can't make one of those and not think of that story. Yeah. And now, like a friend of mine, so one of the guys who helped found Tournive originally, he bought a couple of those off me for his kids, and I told him the story, and he's like,
"That's amazing.
It's exactly the same thing. Like they burnt their names into the bottom of it, each of the kids, and I saw them yesterday, and I was like, those plates work? And I was like, yeah, we're using them. They're using them every single day for like whatever your apple slices at the side of your meal. And I can still say, that's the story. The other story, that's oak, and that's from this part of the forest here. So that's what I want in a story of the piece that I'm making, I guess. And, I wouldn't just make those just to make them to sell, because...
No, but J.R. Cooper, arguably the last great Appalachian potter that we spoke to in August, was very clear on this. He's made he's like 75, he's been making since he came back from Nam. that kind of thing, right? He makes his pints, his half pints and his mugs because they pay for him to make his big face. They pay for him to do sculptural pieces. Yeah. He makes these beautiful big they've carved faces on them, and they're all based on characters he's met throughout his life and that he grew up with. But that finances that. And so to say like, oh, I don't, and there is a little bit of a more so on the artistic side of making, to be like, no, you must just make the things that flow. And Florist we spoke to yesterday, he was very like, he's making the things that flow through him, the things that he feels great. And that's great. I applaud that. But he has made things that sell in the past. So he's made things that sell and he's built up the following. So you can either do the massive thing when you already have the following, and I don't mean following as in social media sense, I mean following as in people that will buy.
Customers,
You could decide to plant an apple tree and people will buy apples, or you're that guy. They've just bought into you. In the meantime, there is also the other side of it where you make that thing that sells, and that's how people get to know you. So that when you decide, I'm going to do the plate, but it's going to be a metre wide and it's actually for hanging on a wall just for the sake of it. Someone's like, oh, I bought that guy's plate 20 years ago. Or my dad bought that guy's plate 20 years ago and I used to wear my apple slices off it. And now I've got, it's that thing. You have to, there's no discredit in making the thing that sells.
No, not at all.
Because you have to build something from it.
And also, I mean, even on a purely technical level, I can't do the huge pieces without having the muscle memory and the skill and the time at the machine and the time in the craft, that those things, that repetition gets into you. So that's the two things will always go hand in hand to me, and it means that I'm more comfortable doing those big pieces now, even relatively early in the career. I do big pieces because I've got big pieces of wood coming in, and I love doing that kind of stuff. I'm comfortable doing it because I know, okay, I'll do this today, tomorrow. Wednesday I'm going to do 30 of those plates. That's maybe ambitious for one day, but I'm going to do a whole bunch of those because in another couple of weeks that market's coming up, and these are good. I've got full faith in this, even though it's like a simpler piece. I can still say I'm putting myself forward by doing this.
There's the other thing as well, is it not so much more gratifying to do that, the piece that sells, than to have, and I know you've got part-time links to Tournive, but to have like a part-time job stacking shelves in Tesco so that you can do the big pieces of art. It makes so much more sense to do the thing in and I don't mean in a negative sense of the word, a watered-down version, but it makes so much more sense to be still doing the thing, just on a scaled-down, sellable, quick turnover version.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like it's for me, it's all one and the same. Like my name's on the small piece as much as it is in the big piece.
Exactly.
And I know also the reality is of those kind of big pieces that they take much longer to sell.
Yeah.
There's some pieces out there that I'm pretty sure I'll hang on to for a long time. Not because I'm attached to them, but that some stuff I will be surprised if I sell in the next 2 years. Yep. But I'm happy it's there. It's like in the vault or whatever, and maybe I'm going to look at them and some of them in 2 years and go, oh, this is a really awkward first try at this kind of shape. But all of that it all has to happen. It all has to come.
It all has to come out. Right.
And do you sell via your website, Instagram? What's your most?
Mostly at the moment, I'm selling in person. So I'm at a couple of different markets in Brussels. There's quite a good ecosystem in the city of these pop-up stalls and stuff like that. So the website right now isn't being sold. Maybe by the time this is out, it might be. Like, I do still kind of trip over I need things to be really perfect before they're there. So it's the same with the website, right? It's like my website at the minute is just a landing page.
Yeah.
There's photos, there's like my Instagram feed goes there. There will be a shop on there, but it'll be in the new year because right now I'm focusing production on like these markets coming up to Christmas, that kind of stuff. And that works, you know. The first one I did, I was like, okay, it needs to make some income, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. Like I've been in some of these like wood turning groups on Facebook that have like 50,000 people, and it's every single level of quality on there. And you see people on there going, oh, I did my first maker's market today and I didn't sell a single thing. And everyone's like, oh, that'll be fine, it'll be fine, as like encouragement. But I don't remember the encouragement that people give. I remember there was a guy and he went to one of these things and he sold nothing. So that's my expectation for this. And if that had happened, it would have been upsetting, but also it wouldn't have meant, I still would have had food on the table when I go home. I'm still in a relatively low risk situation. So I did one or two. The first one, I sold quite a lot. Only a low proportion of that was to people who were just there because they were my friends and family, That's going to be the first sell.
Yeah, first customers.
But there was enough of not those people, enough people walking by going, oh, this is really nice. And like they were pulled over by the huge thing that they went, oh, that's actually quite expensive, okay. And then they would look at the other stuff and go away with that. So that was...
There's the perfect example of why you do the big thing and the sellable thing.
Exactly.
Because like, if we'd been introduced to J.R. Cooper because he's done the same pint mug for X years, the same half pint in the same mug, we probably wouldn't have been there. But when it's like, oh, he does these amazing like that's why we're there.
Yeah.
Oh, but he also does these things that we could buy.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's the foundation of the business is there, but there's the artistic side that keeps you going into it.
Same as car companies, though, isn't it? Like at the Swiss car show, or even some of them now bridging into SEMA car shows, where like what they're displaying is the Audi don't display the A4, it's the RS4 plus.
These like concept things that like may one day see the thing, but they've put the work into it.
That make people beeline towards that car.
Like, I mean, Volkswagen own Bugatti, right? Bugatti doesn't make them any money.
No.
It loses millions and millions and millions, and they sell a bunch of Golfs. And I'd be very happy if I could make Golfs, right? That's a good cars. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I am now with it, It's still, I suppose, a fledgling part of the business as craft. I'm still making things on spec for people. I made some street benches that got sent to Lille. I made a theatre set just a couple of weeks ago. But I can approach those now in a different way. I'm not going, oh, I'm wasting my time doing this. It's like, this is a support to what I like really want to be doing. I still get actually a creative buzz out of that stuff, and I'm in a slightly lower pressure with it as well. It's all contributing towards something that's, it's turning over. The engine is okay. I'm not going to make my millions out of it, but I don't have any ambition to make the millions. So it's...
And you don't,
so
we don't need to make millions.
Just enjoying what you do.
Yeah.
Being able to sustain that is...
So what was the point in that journey that you felt like, I am now the maker I told my wife I was going to be?
I think she was the one who said it to me. She was like,
oh, really?
Yeah, she said,
you've become the maker.
Yeah, you've become that maker now, right? And I go, oh yeah, I suppose. And it was pretty recent. It was like last year, really, I kind of started. And, there was also, in the same year as that, there was also things that had gone wrong. There was builds that didn't work out. But she said, look, people are coming to you going, oh, you can make this. Like, there's a stack of metal frame Eames chairs in there that someone came in going, we need these repaired. No one will repair them. I was like, oh yeah, I can do that. So that's going to be a relatively high pressure welding job, but it'll be a day's work. It'll be a nice bit of thing. And the more that I say yes to that, the more it just keeps coming. Like, I don't promote the fact that I weld.
Yeah.
If you looked at my Instagram feed, maybe somewhere there's a photo of me welding somewhere, but it's not like I promote it a lot. It's just a skill that's there that will pay a bill that week when that job comes in, And they're relatively frequent. And sometimes this is people walking in, they go, oh, we heard there's a metal shop here. Can you repair this thing for it? If they heard there was a metal shop and they want to learn how to do it themselves, I'm like, yes, here's Tournive, here's the organization.
Yep.
If they go, can you just do it for me? I was like, yeah, I can just do it for you, and I'll send them the bill and I do it. So the two organizations, the two businesses can work hand in hand.
Yeah.
I'm not like competing against the company that I work for while using their workshop. There's give and forth with that. You have to strike the balance a little bit. But I suppose at that point I can go, yeah. And also the fact that I'm teaching people how to work the woodworking machines, how to weld, how to cut metal, that's also actually been a huge boost to my confidence as a maker, because when you're actually having to explain why you do something a certain way, that's when you go, oh yeah, I've actually got 20 years experience making stuff. You know, I can go, if you do this thing, this will work out because I've done it X, Y, Z times. I've hung a car off this single wire, so you can attach this stuff to this. It's going to be strong enough, you know. So that's definitely been. I don't want to say like it sounds a bit like an ego boost. Maybe it's like people coming in who know nothing and they get impressed because I know a lot of stuff, right? That's basically what it is. But by having to explain it all the time, I can actually be confident that I do know a lot of stuff. I do know how to get it. I can get somebody from never welding before to welding aluminium in, 2 days' work. Not always, but you can achieve quite a lot of stuff with people, and they feel good about it because they feel like in a short space of time they've achieved something good. Yep. I feel good about it because it's like, I can explain something. And I think it was actually Glenn Lucas in Ireland. He was saying this. He's like, actually, when he started teaching, his own technique improved a lot because.
Yeah, I was going to say that there because we've spoken to a lot of people that teach, and certainly when I taught the guys how to design and stuff, like you're forced to not be an autopilot. Like certainly when welding and fabricating, there is an amount of autopilot that kicks in, and when you're teaching, you're forced out of that autopilot. Yeah. You're forced to consider every single decision because that person that you're teaching is relying on your word as gospel, because that's all they know at that point. Like they don't know what they don't know. That's all they know. The way I talked about this yesterday at length, the way you do anything is the way you do everything. So what you're communicating to that person is like, this is now my reputation I'm communicating to them as a teacher. I think there's something so powerful in teaching.
Yeah. Like, I don't teach wood training. I've not yet taught someone.
You're new to that.
So. But I'm new to it, and I'm going to wait a long time. It's like, I think Stephen Jones, the guy in Texas who you talked to, he said the same kind of thing, right? He said, I'm going to do some more training, take more training first, so I'll do the same thing. I'm not complaining about it, but there is here an expectation that I'm going to start teaching what I'm doing, because it's what I've done with everything else. Like I started teaching welding as soon as we had welding gear. Now I've got really good wood turning gear. I was like, why aren't you teaching? Someone else is actually doing wood turning training courses for us. Right. So I'm just like, I don't want to do this. I want to keep this a bit as my thing for a couple of years, and then I'll go, okay, now I'm ready to do this. And it's, most people understand, but it is, I understand from their point of view, it's a bit funny that they see these huge things and like lots of work being done, and they go, oh, can we learn how to do that? It's like, you can, but it's not right now because I'm waiting. So someday I'll start, and then I know my technique will improve and everything else.
You're just concentrating on your work at the minute, and that's absolutely fine.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, Kate. Like, and there's power to that because there's so many people. The internet is littered with them at the minute, trying to teach you something. There's so many talking heads trying to teach you something about something that they don't know how to teach you. Yeah, there's a reason that. And I'm not always the biggest fan of universities. They have their space. I've been through university, but I don't think it's for everybody. But my point is, there's a reason that universities ask you to have a PhD before you start teaching. Yeah. Because you need to prove that you're of a level. Now, whether the PhD matters to what you're doing or not is subjective, right? In some things, of course it does. In mathematics, of course it does. You need to know everything inside out. In other things, certainly in design-based subjects, it may or may not. Not discussing that or arguing that at this point. But there is a level in which you need to get to that needs to be recognised, so whoever you're teaching to knows to take you seriously. Yeah. Because you could have someone come in that's done a bit of wood turning, maybe on a similar level to you, but it's been portrayed to them through you, or I'm not saying you do this, of course I'm not, but being portrayed through you or through Tournive that this guy is the wood turner. Yeah. And then you end up with someone like Giorgio coming over and being like, cool. You want us what?
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Right. Yeah.
I totally agree with that. I think there's a level of comfort, and I think there's a huge pressure that you could end up putting on yourself too early if you decide to teach. That may take away, and because ultimately I think pressure does take away that creativity. In a big way, and that doesn't come back. Like once you've put that pressure on.
A wee bit.
Yeah, it's tarnished. Yeah.
And that's the thing. I mean, I don't want that. I can't have this now be just another job that I want to find something better after. You know,
this is your thing, and
this is kind of my thing now. I've still got my 10 fingers. I've got plenty of scars in this hand from the little mishaps that, you know, that's all teaching material, you know. I can say, this scar is when I didn't follow this rule that I'm about to teach you. This is from that, this is from that, you know. And that's, for me, it's become kind of who I am in a big way. More so than before. And I was just like, Hugh's handy. Which, like, you know, as a teenager, nobody would say that about me. Nobody would say, Hugh's a practically minded guy, you know? Get him to put up a shelf. That was not the case. Like, nobody bothered teaching me how to drive a tractor, for example. Yeah. Because it would have just been wasted on me. Right. So,
despite growing up on a farm.
So I mean, now I can drive a tractor. I've got like chainsaw license. I can do all sorts of stuff. I can go home and chop down big trees if I want to, if they wanted me to. But this stuff kind of comes, and it's been, you know, it takes me a long time to describe my career from the point. It's like, the first 20 minutes of this conversation
it's
is
important
me going,
to take that time,
this winding path that I did. And I don't regret any of that. Like, I went to university, it did not work out. There'll always be a little twinge of regret that it didn't get completed, it didn't work out, but not enough for me to change any of that.
Why do you think there'll be a tinge of regret?
Just, it's nice to finish things, right? It's nice to have stuff finished and done. You can go...
Certain things you don't need to hang on to for that long, though?
No, but that's why I need to get therapy, you know? I'm not going to solve it here. But I wouldn't change that, you know? If I'd gone to university closer to home, maybe I'd have stuck with it. But then I wouldn't have been in Dublin, I wouldn't have been in that group, I wouldn't have fallen into that line of work, which wouldn't have led me to this, which wouldn't have led me to all of those things, you know? You can't... I don't know what else I would have been. Maybe I've been something else, a different person, but the meandering path is just as good as this vision. Like, there's this pressure when you're 17 to know this is the vision you're going to have, and you're going to follow through in it, and you're going to have instant massive stress, and that's going to be a career, and that's great if that works for somebody. If I know people who that's exactly been their path, and they're great and fulfilled and happy and fantastic. But for me, like, I wasn't a person at that age who could do that, and I thought I was, but it turned out I was something else. Like, the winding path is good, but it's slow. It takes more time, and you have to be open to that stuff as well.
Being open to that time. And
open to change. Like, change isn't something I'm good with, but I've changed so much in life that it's usually worked out.
I think one of the key reasons that we do the work that Kate set out to do is to show exactly what you've shown, that makers come from all different places. You know, florists we met yesterday always wanted to be a maker. You've got, you know, guys like Ben that went through the military, guys like yourself that went through academia and went down, guys like Chris, still in the military. And then you got guys like, you know, Derek, who's full-time job, doing that on the side. You've got so many, and there is space for all of it. There is space for it, and you can still be a successful maker with all of it. Now, granted, I think there's a time where you need to just lean in, fully lean in. But I think everyone will find that in their own time. So do you describe yourself to people now as a maker or as a wood turner?
I say I'm a wood turner and fabricator. Okay. And then here you can say fabricator because people don't necessarily immediately associate that with engineering and metalwork. So I can say, a wood turner and a maker. Because some of the work it will do is sculptural, some of it's on order. So that's what I'll say, and I'll say, and I also run a workshop. I run a makerspace kind of thing.
And do you hope that the other things will die off to one point you're just saying, I am just a wood turner? Do you think wood turner's your thing now?
I think it is, but I think I'll always do other stuff because if I'm a bit like, a puppy surrounded by lambs. If I've got I have to concentrate on one thing for a very long time, I think it becomes difficult for me. So I always want to have the ability to do welding. I always want to have that little string to my bow in the corner of going, oh, yeah, I can make that, I can repair that.
I guess it's sometimes nice to go off and do something to then come back.
Yeah.
Talked about this with Matt Jackson, didn't we?
Yeah.
Like having just other things on your table.
Yeah.
Because you could end up staring at something for hours that actually you could take 10 minutes to go and do something else, come back and...
And it's always that for me. If I get really stuck on something, I have to do something else. So, in the medium term, we were talking about this workshop and maybe a new space being available for it in the kind of coming years. With the timeline of that kind of thing happening or not happening, I can say, okay, by the time we move in there, if we move in there, I need to be at a certain level that I'm not at yet. In terms of the business side of it being sustainable, I'd like at that point maybe to be fully self-employed,
right,
without having the part-time job on it. Can I get to that? I don't know. If I don't get to it by then, it's not the end of the line for it either. But that's where I want to go down to. But I'll always have a link with as long as I'm in Brussels, as long as this organization exists, I'll always have a link for it. And I know I can also go, even if I'm freelance, I can still give trainings for it. I'd ideally love to have my workshop remain in the same building as Tournive.
Yeah.
And it's also because it's part of my story, this organization as well.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like, look what you said about people can be makers from any angle, can approach it in any way. That's also what the workshop of Tournive is for. It's allowing people to try that out without big risk. So the guys who you met earlier, they're non-professionals, they're doing it as a hobby. We have had 3-4 in the past kind of 6 months, guys starting off a bit like me, little self-employed business on the side, starting making things. But they have a space here where they can come in and without having to spend vast amounts on tools and their own machines and stuff like that, they can try it out and launch it. We had a guy who was with us for nearly a year. He's an architect who was trying to make stuff also on the side, wanted to get more manual work. He tried it out for a year, he did nice work, and he kind of went, you know what, I've tried it. Yeah, it's not for me. And he stopped. And all he had to do to stop was give him back the key. He had some material, he donated some material to the space, he got rid of some other stuff, but he wasn't 20 grand in debt working off the tools. He was going, this isn't actually working out for me. I can stop.
Yeah,
and
I've tried it.
There's a space where someone can try that and not have it work out and it not be devastating to their life,
You also come here and you're surrounded by other people who you can speak to, and
there's a higher chance it would work, I would think.
Yeah. So
and there's also for me that's really great because I could go looking for a workshop space. I wouldn't find one probably in the city.
No.
It's out on the outskirts of town somewhere that I have to maybe take a train to, get a little shed. In many ways it would be ideal. I could have some of my own outdoor space. I could get some of the big trees landed there. I could get the hauling equipment to pick up a big log from the forest and just leave it outside. I could actually work in a better, more efficient way, but I'd be on my own. I don't know if I want that. I really like being here and being able to turn around. So I'm going, what do you think of this? And I'll do that for people. I'll ask somebody who's never wood turned in their life, what do you think of this piece? Because I'll actually get an honest answer. They won't go, oh, well, technically it's really nice or something. They'll go, yeah, it's a bit weird, or this feels wrong. And that's really valuable to me. And it's valuable to the other people using the space as well, that someone can go, what do you think of this? Or someone will be in front of some weird setup that I've taught them before on a machine. And they go, how does this work again? Or is this really the right technique? And then they learn a little, 1% extra by trying something out themselves and having, not necessarily me, maybe someone else who's in the space go, I did this once, or, I saw this somewhere. And I think that kind of, when it works best, that's what's happening. There's a bunch of people interchanging with each other. That's more valuable to me right now than having like the perfect space where I'm in the middle of nowhere. And maybe I'll end up with that, you know, when I've got the 20 years wood turning, when people will come to that kind of area to learn something from me, I'll get there and I'll have my peaceful country life that I was born into.
Yeah.
But right now, for me, the way that I work, I can only do it here in the city, in this city, with the other structures and other possibilities that the city has unlocked for me. Whether that's the funding that I got, the other organizations I have partnerships with. It's like a perfect storm that's resulted in me being able to do this work, being able to pursue it. So it's, yeah. And it's all because of that meandering path. You know, there's no other set of like story that results in me being here and doing what I'm doing now. Yeah. Even though we'd all like to say, oh, if I'd done this, but you don't know. That's the story in here.
Hindsight's 2020, right?
Yeah. And now it's just like, for me, a matter of continuing to develop and learning more. So I mentioned I'm doing this like artistic practice distance course at the University of Gothenburg.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's very light, you know. It's
and
not
this
like,
is your first real delve into artistic education, the distance learning, isn't it?
I would say on a formal basis, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I've learned a lot about artistic expression and how to call it artistic. I don't want to say something too pretentious, right? But like kind of what it is to develop to show some kind of level of artistic truth. Yeah. Like I've got my sister-in-law who lives in the States, was a practicing artist, had an artistic practice for a long time. And when I was really starting wood turning, she'd see my stuff and she said to me one day, try leaving the utility behind. Just forget about what it's for. Because that's what I was doing. I was doing like practical pieces and there's nothing wrong with those things and it's great. But just try loosening up a bit. It doesn't have to say something. It can just be a thing. Yeah. I'm like, okay, yeah. So then it can be more about form. And then that's more what I was exposed to with the other guys. Especially like, there was a mix there, right? Of people who were doing very practical tableware and doing more sculptural, more artistic forms. And they all had different languages and preferences around it. So that kind of exposed it more. But now I'm doing something where like, you know, the job is you have to explain yourself. And it unlocked a lot of things that I kind of felt inside, like about how I felt about the times working with these artists in the theatre performance, what actually my favorite parts of that were, and how that's actually relating to what I'm doing now. Like we had, again, that Belgian artist Meet Warlap I worked with. One of the shows that we had was started like a clear plaster wall. By the end of the show, there was, you know, hundreds of liters of paint. There'd been foam bombs gone off. Things had come through the wall. It was like this massively destructive scene that was very, very beautiful. It wasn't just like chaos. It was like there was an artistic line through the whole thing. And one of my favorite things that we ever did was we mounted that show in the museum, the Museum of Beaux-Arts, it's called, in Brussels. And it's an old like Art Deco building, really beautiful. It's got these marble entrance halls that are huge. And we mounted that performance in the entrance hall of the museum. Wow. And worked quite well, you know, sight lines were a bit difficult. It was putting a stage piece in a non-stage area, has its challenges. But at the end of it, the scene was there on stage, and I was standing with our production coordinator and the artistic director of the museum. The three of us were looking at this aftermath, and I can't remember, one of the two of them said it. We were looking at it, and they just went, "We should leave this here. This should be an install now." You know, we were like, I was waiting to clean it up, and we just kind of looked at it and was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Hugh, when do you need this stuff back by?" I was like, "I don't need it for like 2 weeks." And we left this like scene of destruction that was the main entranceway into the museum, and it was one of my favorite things that we ever did. Like I came back 2 or 3 days later, and people were just walking in going, "What the hell happened here?" You know?
Yeah, right.
And it became that kind of thinking about that stuff now from a critical point of view of like explaining why I'm doing what I'm doing has unlocked kind of stuff like that. Like I want now to go to a piece that I've made and go a little bit, what the hell happened here? You know, why is this wood cracked like this? Why is it deforming like this? What's the, not just as a material, but also why the hell is it this shape, you know? So it's challenging, and you unlock these kind of points of going, oh yeah, I can actually explain this in a different way to, it's a funny shape. You can put your chips in the middle and your dips on the outside. You know, you can go, no, this is why I made it like this. And it's easy to, like you say, have something that flows through you and form on it. I don't know that I always agree with that as a mindset for certain things, for certain creations. I think there's always some decisions that are made beforehand. Like with wood, you make a decision the moment you're at a lump of a tree with a chainsaw. You're already making decisions about what you're doing. But there is a part of that, you can look at a piece and step back and go, I could do something here with this because this piece is this. That's learning technique, and it's learning the unlocking the artistic expression, because everybody has that. Everybody has some kind of artistic expression that they enact in their life, whether they're conscious about it or not. If you start to unlock it with also unlocking let's say a technical skill or a craft or however you want to describe it, if that can add up together, it's even if the stuff isn't like beautiful, if it's coherent, then I'm happy. Nice. You know, there are pieces that I've made that aren't coherent that I get rid of, but they're like a first draft or a basis, and then the second one can become way better. So that's what I mean. That's, if it works well, that will continue and can only get better.
And then there'll be continuing education from that, and then continuing, like that's what it's about, right? Picking, now whether it's self-education or whether it's, you know, formal distance, or whether it's going to see Giorgio or going to see your man in Ireland, like it's all the betterment.
Yeah.
What do you think about Brussels as a place for makers? Especially like, so it's important to mention as well, where we are, like, we're surrounded by embassies for a start, which is weird and really difficult to drive in. But like Brussels as a place wouldn't be my go-to makers city. But it seems quite rich in makers. So
it is. Like, we are not the only makers. Tournive is not the only makerspace in Brussels, not by a long way. I don't know, I can't point at one thing and go, this is why, but there's a couple of contexts that make this kind of stuff possible here that I would find it's not possible to do, say, in Dublin. Now, I haven't lived in Dublin 10 years, so I can't speak entirely to the city, but you know, a space like this would be crippled by insurance rates in Ireland, potentially in parts of the UK as well, I think. There would be a lack of availability of space and a lack of openness to giving access to space. So here, there are a lot of organizations that will give access, albeit sometimes temporarily, to these unused spaces, which is why we're, like, this is really the worst side of Brussels to show you. Like, I'd rather show you the poor, difficult areas like Molenbeek that end up in the news for really awful reasons. Right. That's kind of more dynamic and interesting than this area where all the embassies are. The reason we're here is because it's an empty building that we can access and use. There are other maker spaces that are around that the possibilities for making stuff here are really wide open. There's like, just to name a couple of places, there's like a micro factory, which is I would say, a little bit more of a professional makerspace than what we have. In terms of their user base and access, they've also got a big textile aspect to their work, and they're more of a digital space, so they have like 3D printers, this kind of stuff. Then there's more drop-in makerspacers, so Fab Labs, this kind of stuff, that are easy to access for anybody. Like, I think there's a place that has like a water jet cutter that you can do absolutely amazing fabrication on. And it means that I don't have to think of, if I really wanted a complete workshop, I need a water jet. No, there's one across the city. I know what the by minute rate for using the machine is. It's great. It fills that gap when I need to get that stuff done. There's a lot of opportunity for it. There's a lot of organizations that will help you with it. There's a lot of the local Chamber of Commerce, it's called Hub.Brussels is what they're called. They have been very helpful. Like that's where the grant that I got came from, that kind of source. There's a lot of those opportunities to help you start off. And especially at the moment, there's a lot of consideration being put into the like circular economy. So reuse of material, where your material has been sourced from. It's a huge point on any of these applications. So the fact that organizations like Sonia Wood exist, there's also organizations that do urban mining. So there's 2 of them in Brussels that have a massive stock of material that's been taken off old architectural sites and stuff like that. Like, is there anything? Yeah, there's stuff around the place. Like when we came in here to build the workshop here, the walls in here were here, but any of the divisions in the workshop, the place was empty. There was nothing. So all of the panel walls that we built, that's all recycled material. We paid 6-7 euros a sheet for that stuff that we built the place out with.
From this architectural recycled place,
So like a place called Batiter takes stuff, they're a subdivision of a big construction materials supply firm, and they were just seeing skip loads of stuff being thrown out of every site that they would deliver material to, and they went, oh, maybe we could do something about that, and they do. So like
all those little things though, they're like the subsoil to a really powerful ecosystem in making.
Yeah.
You know, just now whether you're paneling out a workshop, which many makers will have to do, like if you're a metal fabricator, you want a clean bay, you want like whether it's that or whether it's whatever it is, whether you want to box a kiln in or whether you just want a crap sheet that you can just template something on.
Yeah.
Plywood's like 20, 30, 40 quid.
Yeah.
Like a reclaimed sheet's a couple of quid, like you say. They make huge differences. What seems like such a small thing makes a big difference to the overall ecosystem.
Right, it makes things viable. It reduces the risk. It gives you, it unlocks possibilities. Like one of the favorite projects that we ever did as Tournive was during the COVID lockdowns. There was a project that we identified. Some people from the part of the community came to us going, we've got this space, we'd like to build something for it because it was a bridge that had been condemned for structural reasons, cars couldn't drive it anymore. So it became pedestrianized. It just had these concrete blocks blocking off car access, and it kind of became a meeting point for the area. Like in the area, there's a couple of blocks of flats, there's a couple of, that's kind of an older community of Brussels, so it's pretty much in the inner city. You know, it would just be great to have some benches, you know? So we put together a grant, and during COVID there was a lot of these. They were called all sorts of names. Like I said, the double meaning words in Brussels. Playcation was one, instead of staycation, a playcation. And the aim was really to create kind of public spaces for people to enjoy, because otherwise they had nothing. They couldn't go during the height of the lockdown. You had like a limited radius you could travel. You had to have a reason to go out of that radius. There, if you're in a block of flats, like council flat kind of size things, what do? You can't leave your house. You're like really isolated. There's a big wide open area. It's a bridge. It was like COVID safe or whatever, but there's just some concrete blocks. So why not put some other things? So I had a look around into Rhoda, this architectural salvage place, and they had just gotten a batch of building cladding. It was Afsalia, it's like tropical wood that I normally never go near because I don't want wood that comes from far away. Yeah. But the stuff came from Leuven, like
it's
the next
already
city over.
done that.
It's already
journey,
done. It's already here. And we just bought a whole bunch of it out of this like small little grant that we got, and we made these furniture pieces out of doing as little as possible to that material as we could. Like we didn't refinish them, we didn't strip off the old varnish because the varnish had been on them 30 years or whatever it was outside already, it was perfect. We made these tables and benches. There's some guys who play chess on that bridge, so I used some of the different colored wood to make some chess tables, chess boards on it, and we stuck it out there. And for me, it was like this, when people talk about the circular economy and the reuse, they talk about the donut, like the closed circle. Yep. And that was a perfect closed circle. There was material that was just over there. It had been stripped off. It had already been used. we could take a bunch of it. We did as little as we could to it, which meant we also didn't have a huge amount of waste from it. Screwed something together, like real simple design that an architect friend or a guy who has done architecture, who's occasionally used the workshop, came in and saw us building it and just fell in love with these things. He started telling me these like Italian designers who are doing this whole school of thought of conceptual design based on the material that you have. And I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense to me, but I've never heard of these guys. This is just, I would try to do something simple and good. And it was this perfect donut of material use back into public use as well. And that kind of thing, I would struggle to do something like that in a city maybe that I don't know, or in a city that doesn't have that ecosystem around it. And from what I know of other Belgian cities, like in Antwerp, there's also a tool library. It's a bit less active than us, but there's also material reuse places. There's also studios that have a lot of makers put together and doing really wild artistic stuff that they can help each other out. It's a place called Burnham, which means neighbor in Antwerp. They've got a big stock of material. I've been talking to them recently. They're also like, oh, we've got some trees if you want them. And I'm like, okay, I can expand my radius by like 10 kilometers and get wood from Antwerp as well that I can use in my practice. It's also ideal, you know? So, yeah. It's fertile ground for it, and there is supports available, and you can do it without as much risk.
Yeah, you talk a lot about limiting risk. Why do you think that's been so important for you? Or what do you think other makers can take from that?
Well, you're always reliant on supports, right? So maybe it's a deep psychological question again, but you know, at the end of the day, we're all people. We have obligations. We have, in some way, family. We don't have kids, but we have house to look after. We have each other to look after. We each run. My wife also runs a business. We also have a responsibility to that business and the people employed there. So we can't be too flippant about it, right? And with business, like an administration load shouldn't be underestimated. Like I said, I've got this secondary thing that lightens that load. Means I can be a bit more agile. Agile is the word I was looking for half an hour ago. That allows us to experiment more. That pushes us to do more stuff, because it was definitely risky going for a grant and going kind of almost all in on this wood turning. That's risky. But I've still got something that's backing me up. I've still got both the part-time job. I've also got the base of what I've been doing before. I know if everything really goes wrong, I can still work. I can still get a job. As long as I've got my health and all my fingers, I'm going to be okay. I'm also in a place, like we were talking a bit about health services and stuff like here, it's also a country with a really good health service. It's part of why the administration is so difficult, because you have to contribute into the system. I'm happy contributing to the system because it looks after me as well. But all of this stuff adds the risk, and it supports it. It's this
balancing act.
It's a real high wire act, yeah.
I think my advice to anyone starting, or my one man's opinion to anyone starting, is lower the risk. Like, the lower the risk is, the more freedom you've got, and really that's what we're all looking for, is freedom and autonomy to be creative, right? As makers and as people in the creative space, we're just looking for freedom and autonomy. Because that, I think, opens all of the doors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's a conversation I think that you have to have with yourself a lot. Like, if I had found a business financial support that would have come with some kind of constraints, that kind of thing you really have to look at very, very carefully. Like, okay, there's support. Is there a deliverable I have to return? Am I over-promising? Am I over-committing to something? What are the assumptions underneath what I'm doing? So it's conversations we have a lot in terms of the organization. We are a non-profit. We get little bits of support and subsidy. You know, if we were an organization that did like social insertion, so what I mean by that is like training people to return back to the workplace. That's not what we do, right? That's not our competence. We don't have an experience in that. It's not our main thing. There are other workshops in Belgium and in Brussels who that is a bit what they're doing, and they're, you know, I would say that sometimes in the production work that we do, we're bidding against those guys. We're competing sometimes for the same work. I don't feel bad if they get it, because I know they've got a workforce. I know they're also doing the work that having a workforce like that requires, and it is really hard work. So we could expand massively the organization by getting into that. But it's not our core competence.
No.
It's not that it's irrelevant to what we're doing. It's very valuable work, that kind of stuff, but would be such an expansion into away from what we are as a base.
Yeah.
That, yeah, we can't really go for that. Even if it came with, like, you know, here's a building for free for the rest of your lives. Here's structural support. Here's administrative support. Here's all those things. It can't really come at the cost of no longer being who we are. And the same for me as like an independent. I couldn't take a support that would rely on promising to take on an apprentice or something like that. You know, like I'm not in that position.
You have to recognise when it's just one step too far.
Yeah.
When it's one bridge too far, because as soon as that affects your autonomy, your ability to act freely in what you're doing, or your ability to like change direction. Like Kate and I have been at this 4.5 years, and we change direction. We have one clear mission, but we change direction in the way we have to experiment a number of things to get to that mission, and to serve that mission best. So we do have to change direction, which is why we've never gone for funding, because we don't quite know what all this will be.
Yeah.
You know, we had a list of goals this long, and then we really sat down and just went, this is our goals for 2024. This is the key points that we are going to hit. And they might still change in 2024, and that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
But with, like you say, with some of these other grants and funding, and it's something that I think makers should be very, very, very aware of, is no matter what the number is associated to it, like, we've never really looked at grants because the few we looked at early on had too many limiting factors on us that wouldn't allow us to do this unapologetically in the way we do it. So people that are looking at those grants and are looking at those funding, which are fantastic opportunities, and they've obviously presented you guys with opportunities and many other makers with great opportunities, but you need to be sure that they fit you, not that you're fitting the grant.
Yeah. I
think that's the important bit.
Yeah, and I think a big thing is freedom to downsize, because the way that economy and supports are set up is the ultimate aim from their point of view is to support growth. That's like the ultimate aim of the economic policy of whoever's driving this funding. Unless you're in, there's different things in like cultural grants, stuff like that doesn't really apply to a lot of sometimes it will, but not often, to makers. The idea is to support growth. People want to go, we gave this organization this money and now they've created this many jobs, or they've reduced this many tons of waste from reaching X waste stream. These are like really clear objectives to write in a policy document. They're not so easy to express in terms of actual everyday making. So freedom to be able to downsize and not just grow all the time, that's really important. And I don't want to, like if I had an opportunity, like actually quite early after I did that residency, I remember I got an email forwarded to me from the Sonny and Wood Co-op, the wood people, going, someone's asking us about turning spheres. Can you do that? And I was like, I could try it out, yeah. So I got into this conversation with this company, and they were looking for, they wanted it to be in beechwood, so that's what we have from Sonny, perfect. And they wanted little spheres like 12 centimeters solid wood with a little feature on it. And they're going, can you make something like this? I'm like, yeah. I was kind of, figuring out the technical challenges of it, how to do it kind of reliably, looking up the company, doing research on the company as well, going, they didn't really explain what this was for. It was just like this thing. And there are companies who supply parts for manufacturers. So they supply kind of larger volume parts, like say the strap on your case there, they'd make that kind of thing, like this strap. So I was going, they probably want like a lot. So I was thinking, I could really optimize, get into production of it. It would actually be a really good exercise for me, I think. And it was just after I'd kind of invested and put my new stuff online. So online available to me. So I was like, yeah, a couple of little accessories. It could be a nice opportunity. I could really grow very quickly with this. And I was like, yeah, I could produce quite a lot of these pretty quickly. What's the timeline involved? How many units are you looking for? And we had this whole back and forth conversation, and the final email was like, okay, great. Could you get me a price for 10 to 40,000 units? And I went, oh,
Yeah.
okay. My high volume was like, 1,000 of these in 6 months, And I went, okay. So I actually got some advice from other people saying, what the hell is it? Like, I didn't even realize this was a thing that I could be asked to do, So I went, oh yeah, but for that you need like this industrial thing. And I replied back pretty quickly there, going, okay, this is not within my capacity.
Yeah.
But there was an opportunity there for that kind of a volume thing. I was like, I could actually base a whole thing just on this thing. I could sit down for a day and work out the pricing, work out the machining, work out the engineering behind doing something like that.
And the whole job would probably pay for all the machinery required to do it. Like X, Y.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then I'd have been stuck with some big hydraulic CNC lathe and a whole production facility, and like that would have been 6 months of my life.
That you've stepped away from creating, making.
Yeah.
And I think all these opportunities, they come across and you're like, oh, great. But the cost is not just in the setup, because you will likely make that back, especially with you. The cost is in 6 months.
Yeah.
Stepped away.
And the cost is in the years after that of going, well, I have to keep doing that. That's what I'm going to do now.
Yeah, that's who I am now. I'm that guy. Right?
Yeah. And I mean, there's a business case for doing it another way, like getting subcontracting stuff out like that. But I'm not that business savvy or business agile to.
It's also still taking a step back.
Yeah. It's taking a big step back and potentially chasing something that isn't going to be as rewarding, even financially. And if opportunity comes up that are to scale that I can do, that would be, let's say, purely financial as an aim, or purely I like a technical logistical challenge.
Yeah,
that's nice.
Yeah, but
it has to be to scale. It has to be something that I can keep doing.
If that was 1,000 of them, the value for that for you was not just the financial value. The value is, this is technically a good challenge. I could really hone in skills.
Yeah.
But when you're then talking about taking that challenge away, because actually the challenge is, where do I find the machine that just does it?
Yeah.
It doesn't balance out.
Yeah,
it's not all about the bottom line.
No, there's been stuff I've walked away from before, like other creation. I just don't want to do this kind of work. And that's again the freedom. It's not just the risk. It's like the risk of some guy wanted some cladding on his outdoor wall, which I was all up for doing. But then it turned out he also needed some like modification to like the framing around the thing. I was like,
not really.
I'm not gonna start messing around with your flat roof, and no. Like, I could probably do that work if it was my own house. I'd be comfortable doing it. I'm not gonna do that for somebody else. I'm just gonna go, look, I think you need to get a company in here. And it's a bit the thing, I was like, the one thing I learned with this whole interior carpentry thing, it's a very tough business to do on your own. Like, you need other people working with you. There's companies that are doing it that are going to be cheaper than you, faster than you, and get a better result. And the guys doing the install have like pensions and lunch breaks and stuff like that. So it's, I won't do certain things anymore. I've tried a couple of them, and some of it's worked out really well. Some of it not so much. So all of that stuff. It's about the agility and I think because I don't have like a formal carpentry training either, right? I've essentially self-taught through working. It means that I don't have set ideas. I don't go, okay, I'm going to make stairs, I could make some in a staircase, but somebody else will have the formal education to do it, and they'll be able to just go, this costs this much, this is the steps, this is what I'm going to do. For me, it's going to be figuring it out, arriving at a price that's going to be too high. There's time and cost in that, figuring it out. Yeah. Huge time and cost in figuring that out. So, it's been a journey. It has. It continues to be. So we'll see where we go next. We'll see what is next. So, Christmas markets, obviously. Christmas markets, all that kind of stuff. So, like, quite a bit of production. Continuing a little bit with. I have to improving my communication quite a bit. Doing things like showing my face on camera. It's like it's just this it's like a huge hurdle to me, and I have no idea why. I'm not a shy person, but as soon as there's a video of me doing a thing, which is kind of one of the things that's expected, doing little reels, doing videos, I just go, oh, just like frame it from here, like, or frame it just on my hands or something like this. So communicating a bit better, because I think I do have something to offer as a person for this. So that's kind of the project for the next kind of year. Going for more of the kind of craft and higher end, like art fair kind of stuff is where I'm aiming for. It's a little bit why I'm doing stuff like this distance course. It's maybe in a way, like from a psychological point of view, it's like a bit of a reassurance for legitimizing what I'm doing, but it's also teaching me how to communicate what I'm doing, because it's not always that easy to communicate the intention behind stuff. So from a business end, that's kind of aiming more and more for those. From a practice point of view, I'm going back in May to Glen in Ireland,
nice.
Doing another advanced kind of intense workshop there for a week. We'll see. I think I've got good friendships and partnerships, and there's a good network in wood turning. That's there around. There's people who I've never met who we talk really, really regularly, and we exchange comments and ideas and like support about stuff. And I can put something up, go, I don't really know how I feel about this, and I'll get really valuable feedback from people, because I can do it here. Like I said before, I'll ask someone who has no idea, well, what do you think of this? But to also be able to do it to somebody who has the 20 years experience that I don't, and they'll go, this is good, this is really nice, this is a thing. And sometimes they'll say, and that's really great. Someone going,
to be honest,
better sometimes than someone picking something up and going, this is nice.
Yeah.
Like, okay, thanks, it's nice. But what do you actually feel holding it? What do you feel about it? What do you think? Why did you want to pick that piece up, you know? Yeah. So we'll see. There's aim to be entirely independent by some point, but there's no real deadline for that. It's really now an experiment. I've got the support to get me this far. I don't have massive deliverables from it. I think it's going to work out. I feel as I go that, this is going to continue. This is going to continue to be what I do. At a certain point, maybe it'll have to professionalize. It'll have to take a step up in order to be paying like a commercial rent on the premises. I'm using that kind of stuff. That's not in the short term. So what I want is to be able to, if that happens in the medium term, be able to go, okay, I'll just take the next step. I'm going to go for that. Start teaching more things, that kind of stuff. So, yeah. The way I'm describing the near future, it's like continuing this, right?
Yeah, right.
That's been the model so far.
That's the only certainty through your life, right?
Yeah, so we'll continue with that. We're fairly settled in Belgium and Brussels for the moment. We're still people who, we've moved country once, we could do it again, we don't know. But for right now, with the ecosystem that we have around both of us, it's where we are, and it's a good place.
And I've got one last question. What advice would you give your younger self?
Well, go to therapy. Just keep going. Like, don't question yourself too much, because wherever you are right now, this is actually important what you're doing right now. Even though this point in your life might seem difficult, or this might be a frustration, or that's something you want to escape from. All of those things are actually leading to something. And enjoy it. Like there's risks that you take, there's decisions that you take that you second guess. It's going to work out.
Nice, I love it.
I hear it. Good.
Well, thank you very
done.
much.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
You're a lovely podcast. You can tell it's a good podcast, so I don't have to open my mouth much. I just need to let you tell your story, and that's what it's about, right? We're here to facilitate a story being told.
Yeah, well, it's nice to hear them as well. These like other stories that you've put on there, because there are very few makers who really have a straightforward into making thing.
I think that's the whole point.
And it's really good to know that, because especially when you're starting off, I think everybody has this like lack of faith in their legitimacy of doing what they're doing.
True, yeah.
And eventually you go, I know, I've done fucking cool shit, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And that takes a long time. That takes a long time to be comfortable saying that, or even just to recognize it in yourself. And like, I have done cool shit. And it's now I can do my own kind of cool stuff and see where it goes from there.
Yeah.
But there's still sleepless nights. There's still
of course
doubts and everything else. And
yeah, I'm always worried when people say there isn't. I'm like, how hard are you trying?
Yeah. You know,
because if you're not uncomfortable, I certainly subscribe to the belief of if you're not really uncomfortable in what you're doing, like how hard are you actually pushing?
Yeah.
I think that's a good sign of things are going well because you're really fucking uncomfortable, and that's Floris again described it yesterday. Like we all need to hit the bottom once, so we know the way back up, right?
Yeah, exactly, and you just learn from that. You know, you learn from I should have recognized this and said no earlier.
Yeah,
like,
and everyone's bottom can be different, but we all need to recognise the low points. And equally, a lot of us, you certainly are in that camp where we're both in that camp. I think you more so. You need to recognise your high points as well.
Because you can just sometimes you're just like, okay, done that, cool, but you don't actually appreciate like what you've just achieved.
You spend a fraction of the time celebrating the high point as you do dwelling over the low point, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's also because the high points then become almost less memorable. Like, I've had projects that I took on that I shouldn't have taken on that turned out to be a failure and could have gone really badly. Actually, I was lucky. I had support of people I was working with and stuff like that. It worked out. It was a big learning moment. And then, like, the next kind of bigger projects I did, I thought about it further. I thought about it more beforehand. And then it actually worked out. And it wasn't even stressful. It wasn't even like, this could have been a failure. It was like, I've been through this. Then this next project was easier, less stressful, because I'd learned, okay, see this coming? You need to avoid, you need to head this off. Way beforehand. And then it's like, oh yeah, everything's ready on the deadline. I did like one or two kind of later nights just to get ahead of it, but I wasn't here until like 2 a.m. doing increasingly bad work, trying to get something finished, you know? Everything was fine. I could kind of come home and over dinner go, oh yeah, that'll work out. I wasn't coming home like, you know, looking stressed and pent up and going, I have no idea. I was coming back going, oh, I could try that. And then the next morning coming in, and it just been smooth and easy. And actually almost a bigger project, and it went smooth and it was easy and it was fine. Everyone was happy, the client was happy, I was happy. And that project I'll probably forget about, but the failure is like...
The one that you remember.
That's gonna be in my head for a long time when I think about stuff. So, but it's there to help me have the good ones, I think, I hope.
It's a good example.
That is a great example.
Yeah.
Good. Well,
Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Super.